Welcome to the Confessions of a Group X Instructor podcast. For group exercise junkies and enthusiastic classgoers, we'll explore and uncover authentic, thought-provoking, and heartwarming industry education and inspiration from entertaining, badass fitness pros. And now your host, creator of Warrior Rhythm, Warrior Strength, Warrior Combat, Warrior Revolution, and Warrior Kids Group fitness brands, Ellen DeWord. Here we grow.
Welcome, everybody, to Confessions of a Group X Instructor podcast. I have one of my best friends in the whole world on as our guest today. Mikki, hi. Thanks for being here.
Hi, Ellen. Thanks for having me.
Okay, I have to set the stage for people. First of all, it's very weird for me to be having a conversation with you like this because we are so close. This feels so formal. So Mikki and I go back to the very, very, very beginning of my fitness journey for the most part. Well, my group fitness journey, I should say. I like to refer to you as my first boss, although I did have one wonderful boss before you. Remember, Sherry Merritt?
Mm-hmm.
It's wonderful. And she was the first person that hired me, and I loved working under her. But then I ended up very soon after working for Mikki. So I want to like say a few things about that. I have often referred to you as like the person in my life that like built the bridge for me. And I'm getting like a little emotional about it. I'm so proud of my life and what I've accomplished in these last few years. And I often think of you as being like one of the very few people that, but for you, I wouldn't be here today. You were such a good boss. So first, I remember when I was like wanting to get hired by you for 24-hour fitness, I think I was pregnant with Jesse. And I thought that it was going to be a problem. Like I thought you weren't going to want to hire me because I was pregnant, and you certainly did not mind at all. But you were the kind of boss that gave me good feedback. I actually have tried to be the kind of boss and leader that you were to me. I try to give direct, honest feedback in a kind way that helps people improve. And so anyway, so Mikki was my first boss. We became friends at some point in there, very, very, very close friends. So we were able to navigate that relationship of like friendship hat and also, boss and subordinate hat when we needed to. And I'm jumping all over the place, but I eventually took over your job when you moved to Portland, which we'll get into when I ask you to tell us kind of your story and your journey. But some of the things that I kind of stand out for me is some little tiny stories about you are one, I remember when someone took my cycle class and they didn't like me. And I remember that you made them keep coming to my class. Do you remember? Well, I won't say their name, but do you remember the story?
I remember that I would always tell people you have to give instructors at least 3 tries. I'm not gonna, as a boss, I back my employees first. So I would make sure that what members had to say was really valid. And I don't think that they could tell by one class exactly what was going on, what they liked or didn't like. So I thought 3 tries, then their feedback is valid to me.
Exactly. I remember that's exactly what you told her. And also you told her, you said you backed me, and I was pretty new. But you backed me anyway. And you said, she's one of our best. Keep going. You said maybe you had an off day. Maybe she had an off day. She's one of our best. Go back, go 3 times and then report back to me. And by that 3rd class, I had her, and she became one of my regular people. So, and then I remember another time you gave me feedback when I was teaching at the 3rd and Lawrence 24-hour fitness, the cycle.
Mm-hmm.
That was back in the day when those super low-rise pants were popular. like so low rise that, I think they're actually maybe popular again, but it's because it's been so long. But I used to wear thong underwear, and we would cycle. And so you're hinged, you're bent over. And so the like triangle part of the thong would show on my lower back when I would cycle, and it was in the mirror. And you were the boss that was like, stop wearing underwear. And thank you for changing my life. I've like worn it. What was I ever thinking?
I
But
mean, come on, who wears underwear with their tights?
I don't know. Some people do. Some people do, but we are not those people. And if you're listening to this episode and you take nothing else away from today, please stop wearing underwear under your tights, ladies. Really. That's that's the tip for the day. So, okay, back to our relationship, before I kind of turn things over. I am not very good at maintaining, like historically, I have not been very good at maintaining my relationships with people. I've moved a lot. So like I'm the kind of person that like I don't talk to anyone I went to high school with. It's really sad, but I don't, or college. I just have moved and been uprooted and moved and been uprooted. And when Mikki moved out of my life, out geographically speaking, I remember thinking like, oh, well, this is it, because I don't do that well. I don't do that well. Like maintain distant relationships. But we have done it. And so she and I have stayed in touch. We try to see each other whenever we can. She has been peripherally a little bit involved with things I've done with warrior strength specifically. And so I'm really proud of us. We kept it together. So we were kids together, not together, like not the same kids, but we had kids at the same time. And that's a special bond. I'm sure a lot of our listeners are mamas and have had kids. And when you have a friend who's raising kids at the same ages and stages, and you're all close, moms are close, the kids are close, it becomes like family. So my kids, now grown, really view Mikki as like Aunt Mikki. And we just have a very, very close family feel between our two respective families. Mikki and I first became friends when I was married to a different man, the kid's dad. And you were at my wedding, and also you drove me to get divorced. You were the one, you were like, what song do you need to listen to on the way to the courthouse? And I was like, to the left, to the left. It was that
I
one.
remember that. I think of you every time I hear that song. I drove you to every court hearing.
Think about it every time I hear that song too. I'm like, I remember when Mikki took me to the courthouse, and I was okay, listeners. You might see like this big boss woman on social media today, and that is who I am today. But boy, I tell you what, back then I was a little tiny scared girl who didn't know how to function in the world, did not know how to get divorced, did not, didn't know how to do anything, didn't know how to pay bills, didn't know how to say no to people, didn't know how to stand up for myself or anyone else. And those were those were anyway, it was a different era, a different person. And Mikki, thank you for loving me through the different stages of who I am. Like you've been there, she's been there for me through it all, through seasons of the valleys and seasons where I went without, and through seasons of plenty and mountaintop experiences too. So that's just a little bit about our background. But Mikki, tell our audience who doesn't know you, like maybe a little bit more of, I already said you have these 3 girls and a husband. He calls me Eldon.
Eldon, everybody calls you Eldon. Well, first of all, can I just back up a little bit to something you were just talking about, which is the point in your life where you didn't have all the confidence you have now. And I remember when Ellen started teaching for me, I would go home and I would say to my family, I don't understand. This is the most beautiful girl I've ever met. sorry. And she doesn't have any confidence in herself. And it was really strange to me. And so I think that's a really good example of you can't make up people's stories, you know? You can't look at them and think you know what's going on inside them or how they're going to behave. And I think that will apply to what we're going to talk about later as well. So anyhow, I started in the fitness industry back in high school. I got coerced into taking over a pregnant woman's teaching job. I did not want to, but my boss said, I will pay you 50 cents more an hour. I will pay you $4 an hour to teach classes. And I was said, I'm in. So that's how I started. And then from there, it just grew. I moved to Eugene and I started telemarketing. And then I think I was the janitor at one point. And I started working the front desk and became a manager, instructor, into a director, into a regional director. So it just kind of blossomed from there. And I loved what I was doing. So I kept going.
Mhm.
I ended up loving it enough to pursue my degree in exercise science. So I got that at the University of Oregon. And I've just been doing the same thing ever since. I've taken a little bit of a turn in the last 10 years, and now I'm doing a lot of personal training, in person, online, and some group training versus group fitness. So, meaning I don't always stand in front of the class and do the class with them, but I'm actually walking around and coaching the group rather than exercising.
So you were like 16 years old when you started teaching, right?
16 years old. Yep.
It's like the youngest I've ever, ever heard.
Well, keep in mind, I didn't want to. It's that 50 cents an hour that got me.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
But
Yeah. So you moved to Portland because of Joe's work.
yes, so my husband got transferred. We lived in Eugene for 20 years, and then he got transferred to Portland with his job. And now we've been here, I don't know, about 18 years almost.
And you do a lot of personal training from your home and stuff, right? And
Yes.
you work at Orange Theory.
I work at Orange Theory. I love coaching at Orange Theory. It's very brain stimulating for me as a professional, which is important.
Yep.
Because I'm not getting younger.
So, I'm gonna take like a big, huge turn here and talk about what we're here to talk about today, which is navigating seasons of grief and loss. And you're one of a few people that I've wanted to do this topic this whole year that we've been doing the show. And in fact, I think I reached out to you months ago about it. We just never really like put the time down in our schedules to make it happen until today. But I know you have gone through some significant loss with family members, and the one I remember the most is Verna, when you lost your sister. So will you take us through kind of the journey behind the losses that you've experienced, and then how did you keep going? I think this is very applicable to our listeners because death is inevitable, and we all experience death, and we all experience or will death of loved ones. And how we talk in here a lot about like putting on the happy face and putting your stuff aside and going and like, but then there's some things that are just like so much grief, where it might not be so simple as just slapping on that happy face and going to teach. So we've never gone to this place with the show before, and appreciate you being willing to kind of take us through. So tell us kind of about the losses in your family and then how they impacted you specifically, like as a professional.
Okay. So first of all, both my brother and sister were diagnosed with Hodgkin's disease. And it was back in the early 80s where they really didn't know what they were doing to treat them. And so they would radiate the entire trunk of people rather than just the spot of cancer. And in the long run, that decreased the life of all their organs, right? It basically fried them like a tanning bed fries you, but to thousands degrees. So my sister passed away. They both did get another 30 years of life, which is wonderful. They overcame cancer. But then as their organs started to fail, they just basically both passed away. My sister passed away in 2005, and I remember going to visit her. She was on an oxygen tank, and I was in denial. I just thought, she'll come out of it, or maybe she'll have an oxygen tank sometimes here and there, but it'll be okay. And I sat with her for a few hours, and then I went home. And then a couple of days later, my brother called me and told me that she had died. So that taught me a pretty big lesson that I'll share with you when I get to my brother. I went and taught my class that day. I don't know if that was me being in shock or I don't know what else to do. I feel like I remember that day. One of the first things I did was call you and tell you. That's what I remember. But teaching, I never stopped teaching through any of it. And I think that's just the way that I handled my grief. To go and make others feel good is what made me feel good. And so I just did it. I kept going. And then in 2014, kind of the same thing happened with my brother, but I recognized what was happening and I was not going to let it be the same. I knew what was going on. When they transferred him to Portland to a hospital, I went and sat with him every single day and talked to him and just did, what I could to hope and pray that he would get better. But if he did, it was not going to be the life he wanted. So I ended up getting to be with him when he took his last breath, which is very, very powerful. And what I learned from my sister is that you go and you be with your person and you say everything you've ever wanted to say to them, even if you don't think they hear you or understand you. Hearing is the very last sense to go when someone is dying. So they can be laying there hardly breathing, but they can hear you. Their eyes might not open for days, but they can hear you. So that's what I did. I said everything I needed to say, and I was with him, and I gave him permission to go. That's also another very powerful thing that you can do for somebody that you love. And that was that. I didn't even cry because I felt so at peace. I knew it was coming. I was prepared. And not only does it give you peace and closure in saying all those things and being with them, but I think it gives them that too. So, again, I just kept teaching. That's what felt right and good to me. I don't believe I ever had the desire to get a sub because of that. And I think part of it was me realizing, number one, these are people who didn't have a choice whether they could work out or not. They didn't have a choice to have their life last longer. They didn't. There was nothing they could do. And guess what? We do. And so I'm emphatic about going to exercise, doing what I can because I get to, right? They don't get to. The other thing is, I absolutely know that if either of them knew I was mourning and crying and not going to do my job, they would be pissed. So then there's that, right? There's that feisty Italian blood. They have, I have, and it just felt good. Going to make others feel good is why else do you teach?
Mhm.
That's why I teach. And so that got me through. And it just doesn't seem like that big a deal to me because it's just me. It's just what I did.
Yeah, I remember all of that too. I remember that it wasn't really the cancer diagnosis. It wasn't really the cancer. It was the radiation, the lack of protection and what the radiation did basically to all their organs, but the lining of their heart particularly, right? Um,
Well, they were both different. My sister actually had the lining of her heart removed, which is amazing. I mean, I never even heard of that, but she still lived without that lining for, I don't know, another 5 years or something. But basically, just the liver stops working, the kidneys stop working. They go on dialysis, all the things that just
I remember you, I remember you calling me and I think it was like a Monday night. I think it was a Monday night and you were going to go teach your Monday night class. And I remember being really surprised, but not judgmental. Like just this is whether it's like you're in denial or this is how you're grieving. Like I thought it was interesting. It's always been interesting to me. And I think now that it's been years and I've thought about that so many times, I think I would be the same way. I think I would do the same thing. And I'm sure others like I'm sure grief is individual and there's different responses to it, but I remember thinking, how strange.
mm, don't get me wrong, it wasn't easy, right? I can remember cycle classes where
Like what was people's awareness? I don't remember that part. Like,
they probably didn't know because I'm pretty private, right? I think up here, once I moved up here, the class was very involved with what was going on with my brother because I'd go see him every day. They wanted updates. So the people up here were very aware of what had happened. Um, so that made it a little bit harder. But there were plenty of songs. I remember teaching cycle, and those songs come on that have the most precious, motivating, heartfelt words, right? And I just couldn't say anything. I just rode and cried and rode and cried and rode and cried. And how good is that for us, right? I mean, that's one thing you can give to somebody who comes to your class and they've lost somebody or are grieving. They need that too. So,
something else I learned from you in all of that is just that whole like, we don't know what people are going through in their lives. And there are people in our classrooms that are going through loss right now. Like, think about how many people are listening to this show and teaching classes. There's people experiencing the loss of a loved one, like just in this audience alone of listeners to this episode. And so it's just something for us to keep in check and be mindful of when we're picking our songs or picking what I was going to say is like our words.
exactly. Because one of the worst things to me that somebody could say to me at those points in my life was, "How are you?" And then the tears just flow. So that's a hard read. That's just what we say to everybody, right? Hi, how are you today? But it's something to be aware of. I think if you see a look on somebody's face that you can tell something's not right, maybe have a different approach.
And did you want to share any about your mom and dad or
Well, I then 5 years ago lost my father, and then last year lost my mother. They were both in their 90s, so they had great lives. And of course it's sad. Of course it's sad. But the same, I was with them. I said everything I needed to say to them. And I can't imagine not doing that. I think anybody who doesn't will just have the biggest hole in their heart, the biggest regret that you can never fill. Anyhow, so I I got to do that with both of them and basically planned their services, their parties. And yeah, it's really empowering, I think, and it can be very peaceful if you, I don't know, maybe learn from people around you how they've done it, or maybe you read and that's how you learn. Um, I found it very interesting though, this summer my nephew got married. And at weddings they often have tables where all the people who family members who've passed away are on there. And as I'm walking by this table, this isn't funny, but I'm like, well, that's so interesting that half of my family is on that table.
oh,
Isn't that crazy?
well, I remember at Lily's wedding, I was like, oh, the family's all here. Like,
Right? Yeah. So I had six siblings and then my parents, and two siblings and my parents had passed. So, it's, but obviously it's the way of life. We all need to expect it, and it's inevitable, but it doesn't make it easy. But just like anything, it's how you look at it and deal with it.
so I'm like on the opposite side of the token. I feel like I've been, fairly shielded from significant loss. Like I have not gone through, um, I haven't, short of, grandparents that were not very involved in my life. Like it wasn't bad. It just, there wasn't a lot of closeness geographically or otherwise. And so actually the greatest loss I've ever experienced, Mickey, is when Bo died. That's honestly the hardest thing I've ever gone through. So I'm so grateful for your willingness to do this, because there's people on listening, and there's people that are on, in my shoes. They haven't yet, but will. And then there's people that are going through it. And so can you kind of like wrap up with, you've already kind of like touched on some really great tips, but if you could kind of line them up, what are your tips for people going through grief?
Well, first of all, you have to remember that everybody's individual, kind of like birthing a child, right? Everybody's experience is so extremely different. But for me, um, I do believe if you can get to the person, I mean, if they live far away, you got to get there. If you haven't spoke to them in years and years and years, you got to get there. If you're not getting along, you need to get there. You just have to make it happen, because to be with them and talk to them just will give you the greatest peace after they pass. And you don't have to look back and beat yourself up for not, doing what you should have done. Yeah. So that's probably my biggest advice, is go say what you need to say. Know that they hear you. Then I guess to remember that when somebody passes away, in my opinion, by mourning to the point where you um, don't do the things that give you joy,
Mm,
um, become selfish,
mm,
I think. And um, Oh, I lost my train of thought. It becomes selfish. You're sad for yourself because they've passed away. They're not sad, you know? And of course you need to be sad. I'm not saying that's not sad when somebody passes away, but it's just something to think about. Um, would they want you being super sad and crying and not going and doing your job? And then our job, I mean, what a privilege that we get to go and we have all these people we can make feel better and smile and not, I'm more interested in their mental health than their physical. So if I can make people feel good and relieve stress and grief and all that, that's why I'm there. And I don't need to stop doing that because I'm selfishly mourning. That helps me mourn. That helps me feel better. So I guess I would secondly say to look at how you're mourning, look at how you're grieving, and could you do it differently to make you feel better? What else? Yeah, and part of being unselfish is just that you go and you help them out of their grief. Maybe they just had somebody pass away too. So
Hmm.
I guess those are my top two.
That's good.
Is
That's
that two? I think it was two.
2.5, maybe. I liked when you said like that your siblings would be mad at you if you just curled up in a little ball and
Yeah.
stopped doing.
Well, I mean, I think about myself too. I want when I pass away, I don't want people to stop doing what they're doing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You are still living. Go live. You're lucky to
Yeah.
be able to live.
I love that thing. I love that when you said that earlier too about like that we still get to go get breathless every day, get
Hmm.
skin, you know,
Yeah.
tie up our gym shoes and go. We still get to. And, you know, let's not squander that or take it for granted.
I think it helps you put your little aches and pains in perspective. You know, you're being upset with your kids because they're not cleaning their room. You know, it does me. I mean, the little things don't get to me, as you know.
That's true. You're pretty chill. She's more chill than me. All right. So, okay, we wrapped the show up with a confession. Mickey was like, I don't know. I have so many. I don't know. I don't know what is what are you gonna confess? Or it could be like a story. It could be like some little anecdotal thing. Um, what do you think?
I don't know if I have a good story.
Ew.
I'm sure I have lots of good stories, but guys, I'm in my 50s. I don't have much of a memory.
Um,
I guess I could tell you about the pain in the ass member, one of them that I had. But yet you still walk in with a smile and treat them well. And that's about this man who used to come to my spin class and he would bring a decibel reader. Okay, maybe that's not so uncommon. He would also bring, I don't even know what the tool is called, but it measures temperature and he would put it on everybody's wheel at the end of spin class and he'd let them know if they were working hard or not, because if the temperature on the bike isn't up, you're not using enough resistance.
oh my goodness.
So he liked to think he ruled the roost. He'd bring his own bike seat because, you know, it needed to have a split in the middle so it didn't smash his balls. And yeah, he was an interesting character, but we need them all, right? They all need exercise and
That's right. That is a good one. And just so the audience knows, I know who she's talking about. Classes too. Well, it has been such a awesome time to reconnect with you like this. Usually it's at your kitchen table or mine. Usually she's giving me coffee and some baked good that she made. And there's kids and animals and various, sometimes a husband or two floating around, but I'm actually, it's a gift to me to be able to share my relationship with you like this to the world. And anyone who knows me well already knows who you are. So, but to the rest of the world, if you don't know me well, this is Mikki, and she's been a major influence in my life and then friend. And I took over her job when she moved. And so that was my little foot in the door into management and leadership, and has been an important part of my personal and professional growth too. And so, anyway, we're stuck for life. However, how long our lives are, we're stuck.
Fine by me.
All right, everybody, thanks for listening. Oh, before we go, Mikki, where can they find you? I can put links in the show notes, and I will, but do they want to, what if they want to get involved? Do you do online personal training? Like,
I,
class?
someone's here. The dogs are barking. I do online personal training, online classes, and in person.
Yeah, she's in a suburb, a fancy, beautiful suburb of Portland, Oregon. And we can put the links and to how to contact her in the show notes. So yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah,
Thank you for having me.
coming. And the dogs, perfect timing on the dogs. They're like, Mom, let's go.
Enough.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and share this episode. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for joining in on the Confessions of a Group X Instructor podcast. If you're interested in becoming a warrior instructor, go to warriorinstructors.com. But if you want more and found this episode amazing, please give us a rating. And with a simple click to subscribe, we'll invite you back to our next episode. So remember, be brave, be bold, be blessed. And above all, listen, learn, love.